Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome back to my channel. I hope you're doing really well today. Today I'm going to be talking about high versus low competition niches for KDP. That's specifically, in this case, I'm talking about low content publishing. It's one of the common questions that is generally asked, I think, online about what kind of niches you should target. Should it be low versus high competition, especially if you're starting out? What if you don't have an ads budget and all the rest of it? So I'm going to be talking about my opinion on that, but I'm also going to be sharing with you a situation where I did target a competitive niche and exactly how I went about that and the results of that now. And yeah, just to clarify, I'm talking about low content books in this video. So that's going to be referring to planners, journals, notebooks, logbooks, and those are the kind of books that I've had the most experience in online to date. While I am trying to do some medium content, it's definitely not the bulk of the books that actually make me money and have made me money over time. In a high competition niche, generally you're going to have a lot of search results. So when you look for your keyword, you're going to have thousands, tens of thousands of results. High competition niches tend to be those that are full of books that are very, very established. So you're talking about several years they've been on the platform. They've got hundreds, if not thousands of reviews, and they're, 5-star reviews. There may also be some traditionally published authors as well that do very well. And on top of that, there will be a lot of ads that are being run, and this is going to push up the budget for the ads. So they're going to cost you a lot more, and you might be priced out of the equation if you're not willing to put in a huge amount of money up front to trying to get on the first page, basically. If you are in a situation where there are also so many very good books, then it's going to be harder to make a dent. If you can see there are actually some books there that are very simple covers, there is a way that you could be creative. Maybe there's something that's missing in that niche, you think, that you could squeeze your way in with something different, a product that looks a little bit different, then you can definitely still do that 100%. But there are some cases where that's very difficult to do. On the other hand, super low competition niches, they're going to be harder to find these days. And the ones that are incredibly low, like micro niches, you're not going to get very many sales. So what that means is that you could still make money doing it, but you'd have to really create a lot of books. So that would mean that you're going to have to spend a lot of time uploading to lots of different micro niches, and eventually you're going to make enough money from that to generate some kind of income. But in any case, in high competition niches, basically you will have to work harder at trying to gain visibility. But it's also worth to check out whether a high competition niche is really as high competition as you think it is. So there is quite a simple formula that I use to figure out whether I should pursue a niche or not. And that's just the very first step. So it's something that I do just to get an idea. And I will link you to the blog post that I wrote about that, which also has a video attached. But I'll also just in the description write a brief explanation of what I do in order to figure out whether a niche is kind of viable or not. So what should you target then as a beginner? If you're wanting to start KDP as a complete beginner and you've got no budget yet, you don't have a budget for ads, or maybe you're just not comfortable learning about ads yet, which is completely understandable. I didn't learn ads for over a year after I started on KDP. Then you might want to try some lower content niches anyway to try and get some sales organically and just see if this is for you. And that's what I'd recommend. I really wouldn't recommend running ads right from the beginning when you're starting, when you have no experience with advertising. I think learn about KDP first, start publishing books. I think if you're like a very experienced designer or illustrator or something like that, and you're 100% sure your books are, a million times better than what is already there that you're focusing on, then maybe you want to look at learning ads early on and try and get your book seen. It's all with what you're comfortable with, really. But the primary goal is to try and get into a niche where you can get organic sales. That's what I'd suggest as a beginner. So by contrast, if you do have some experience, if you do have a budget, then you could experiment with the higher competition niches. So more search volume, more people on the platform of Amazon, of course, it's going to lead to more sales if you can pull it off. But ads are really essential in order to gain visibility. The only way that you'd get sales otherwise is in that really beginning period, just after you publish your book. Amazon gives your book a little boost in the algorithm. So it means it will be visible for a short period of time, in which case you might get some initial sales. And if you happen to be lucky enough to get those initial sales, then that could boost your book up again the algorithm, and you can continue to make sales that way. But in any case, ads are pretty essential to gain traction in a higher competitive niche. And also you need to be willing to run ads at a loss in order to rank your book and get reviews. I mean, that's not always the case. You might actually come around with a profitable ACOS. The more competitive the niche, often the higher the ad spend needs to be. There are some exceptions to this, which I will talk about in 1 second. So now I'm just going to talk about the niche that I went into with this particular book. So I decided to go into a niche that I was already in, but by this point it was quite saturated. There were lots of books that had hundreds or thousands of reviews. Some of them were mine. They had hundreds of reviews. And I wanted to see, well, can I go into this niche now as it is? Although it was competitive, there were some things that definitely helped within this niche versus some others that I've tried to go into. So the pros of this niche that I went into was that there weren't that many traditionally published authors in the niche, and that made advertising less costly. Often when you have a lot of traditionally published authors in an area, it's going to push up the spend, because they might be willing to pay more per click than most other low content publishers. You know, generally we don't make very much from our books per book, but they might have a bigger budget to begin with, so you're going to be competing against them, which is a lot harder. Some of the niches that I have gone into that originally didn't have traditionally published authors in them now have a lot, and that has really changed how I do ads with some of those books. So some of the books are actually a bestseller in a different niche, not this one. I've found it very hard to run ads with it to the books in there. It's just so expensive. Just the cost per click is very high. Because they are well established and have a lot of reviews, they seem to do okay, but definitely maybe not as well as when they were having ads running to them. But that's the way it is. So the other pro is that there were some pretty simple books selling well still. So I think if you're able to be more creative with covers, maybe some look a bit bland or whatever, there is always a twist on something that you could do. So just to mention though, that the pros for this particular case are really important, because when you're planning to run ads, you need to be able to afford the ad spend. You don't want to be going into a niche where it's going to cost you ridiculous amounts to get anywhere, and at the end of the day you don't know that that book's going to succeed whatever you do. The cons are just the niche was pretty competitive. Most of the main keywords were 50,000+, and the top sellers have hundreds or thousands of reviews at this point. Now, just as a bit of a backstory as well, when I initially published the book, I tried to run ads to it in the US. I spent quite a bit of money, I can't remember the exact amount, but I didn't have any sales. So I stopped running ads to this book. And at some point when I checked, I actually had made a couple of sales, but I thought I would just leave it for a while. And what happened was that I then had a review. I believe I had 1 5-star review. Off the back of that, I decided to try and run ads again in the US. Again, it wasn't happening. Wasn't making sales. So after trying this again, what I did was I tried to run ads to it in Canada. So in December, I managed to get 71 orders in Canada, and that was with an 18% ACOS. So that's a decent ACOS, which was a surprise. The ads weren't too expensive because it was in Canada. Now, that isn't always the case. Again, sometimes ads that work in the US don't work in Canada and vice versa, and you just have to try these things out. It's literally like a completely different ads platform each time. You can't take it for granted that what will work in one place will work in another. But in this particular instance, for some reason or another, Canada was the only one, because I did also try the UK at that point. But what happened was that obviously from these sales, I got more reviews. And once I started getting more reviews, I got more sales in the other countries, which then led me to be able to run ads to those as well. So even though running the ads was a little bit more expensive in those countries, I was able to generate sales because I already had reviews. And obviously once your book is established enough that you have managed to get a few 5-star reviews, that's going to make all the difference to whether people are going to buy your books. So therefore, you're going to spend less on ads. Now, even in these other countries, though, the ACOS is still higher than this, but it doesn't matter. I'm able to run ads to this book now in the UK, in Canada, and in the US. That wasn't the whole story because, of course, this was Q4, so it was a great time maybe for lots of people to see this book. People left reviews and it boosted the book up. Q4 can be a really great time to start boosting up certain books that you have that maybe haven't really made much of an impact. Maybe they haven't reached their potential. You think that they definitely could be making sales, but they just haven't. It can be a good time to boost that. And the good thing is that the sales from Q4 really do push over into the following year, because you get more reviews often coming in January, and then it keeps kind of growing, and then your book is like really established by the next Q4. So the end result was that this March the book has actually sold over 700 copies. So that is 700 copies in March alone. That's not in total, that's just this month, which is insane. The top seller that I have made about 750 sales, and this one made 700, and they are in a similar niche but slightly targeting different audiences. So the funny thing is that even though they are in the same niche, they're not actually taking sales away from each other, or not obviously. It's just something that complements. So it's always something to think about, because putting multiple books in a niche doesn't mean you're going to just be competing against yourself, as long as they're quite distinct and are targeting different subsets of that audience. So it's just something to bear in mind. So I just wanted to share with you what type of ad I actually used for this. So I used a product targeting ad, and I think it is the best type for this sort of campaign. So target your competitors and even yourself if you are in your own niche. I've previously talked a lot about targeting your own books, only if they're in the same niche as yours, or a similar niche. But definitely if you are doing product targeting, to target your own books. And the reason being is that you can gain a lot of visibility on your own pages, and you have a higher chance that someone is going to still buy one of your books, even if it's one of your other books. Because if you're not on your own page, someone else will be. Another competitor is going to be on your page. Product targeting, by the way, is where you find other books within your niche and you target those books. Just to say that I do have many books that are ranked for keywords that have 50,000 or even 100,000 search results, and it doesn't always mean that you can't make a dent in there, even organically, but it's just going to be harder. But also it's worth looking at if you do see some books that are recently published that are selling well there. I just think people get really hung up often on search results, but actually if you go and look there yourself and really look at the books that are ranking, you get a much better idea about what's possible. And that's why I always say to do a lot of your research on Amazon directly, not relying on tools that are good as an extra thing on top, like an extra layer on top when they can save time, but there is just nothing in comparison to doing it directly. As far as whether you should target low or high competition, aside from the fact that maybe that depends on whether you're a beginner or more advanced, I'd still say to do both. That is exactly what I do. I still publish in things that I deem like low competition, but then I will have a go at some of the high competition niches as well. And it's definitely not always been successful. Look, there are several times where that has not worked for me at all. So before I go, just to give you some key takeaways. So ideally do choose niches that are not flooded with traditionally published authors. That would be something that I would look for. Be prepared to run ads at a loss to get initial sales in a competitive niche. If ads don't work in the US, try another platform such as the UK or Canada. Run product targeting ads to your competitors and to your own books as well. And that's an important one as well. Don't forget your own books, and don't rely on tools to determine competitiveness. So do check the search results on Amazon. Do have a really good look in there, have a dig around, see what other people are doing, see what other potential keywords you could look at, because it's another thing to just consider is that although some of the keywords are going to be highly competitive, there are going to be some in there that you could use that are related, which you could rank for first. So if you go for a lower competition keyword that's still related to your higher competition niche and you start ranking for that, then you'll start ranking for some of the other higher ones gradually over time as well. So that's a really good way to get into a niche that is possibly higher competition. And that's it. So thank you very much for watching today. I hope you found this video useful. Please do let me know in the comments if you have any questions at all, and I will try my best to answer them for you. Make sure you have an amazing week, and I will speak to you again very soon.